There's something very powerful about returning to the place where religion first took shape. Long before global awards, record-breaking sales, and open-world masterpieces, there was a gritty, awkward, deeply atmospheric RPG release in 2007 that quietly introduced players to a white-haired monster hunter navigating a morally decaying universe. As most of you know, that game was The Witcher. And now, nearly 2 decades later, it's being rebuilt from the ground up by the CD Projekt Red. Not remastered, not lightly upgraded, but actually completely remade using Unreal Engine 5. And that distinction matters more than people realize. Think about it. The original Witcher is one of those rare games that feels more important than it feels playable today. Its writing was mature, its atmosphere was suffocating in just the best right way, and its choices refreshingly great at a time when many RPGs still leaned heavily on simple good versus evil morality. However, mechanically it was very rough. The combat relied on rhythmic mouse clicks rather than fluid action. Character animations were stiff as hell, areas were segmented by loading screens, the pacing was slow, sometimes painfully so. It was a game built on ambition that often exceeded its technical limits. Yet without it, there is no Witcher 2 Assassins and Kings, and without that evolution, there's certainly no Witcher 3 Wild Hunt becoming one of the most greatest celebrated role-playing games of all time. We think that is why this remake feels less like nostalgia and more like correction. It's an opportunity to bring the origin of Geralt to Rivia in line with what the franchise eventually became. For many modern players, Witcher 3 was their introduction to this universe. They met Geralt as a seasoned professional, a reluctant father figure, a man shaped by decades of political mayhem and personal loss. What they never experienced firsthand, though, was the beginning of that journey, when Geralt wakes up with amnesia, stripped of his memories and forced to rediscover who he is in a world that remembers him far better than he remembers himself. That premise alone carries incredible narrative weight, and with modern technology it has the potential to hit harder than ever. Unreal Engine 5 isn't just about better textures with prettier forests and environments, it means facial animations capable of subtle emotion rather than rigid expressions. It means environments that feel dense, alive, and oppressive in ways the original engine simply couldn't achieve. In fact, Vizima was never meant to feel grand or heroic, it was meant to feel claustrophobic, politically unstable and morally exhausting. A modern remake definitely has the tools to fully realize that tone instead of merely suggesting it. What many people forget is that the first Witcher is not epic in scale the way Witcher 3 is. There's no continent-spanning war dominating every moment, no spectral cavalry riding across the sky. The story is smaller, dirtier, more intimate. It focuses on conspiracy, racial tension between humans and non-humans, poverty, disease, and political manipulation within a quarantined city. The conflicts feel grounded rather than mythic, and that grounded storytelling became the DNA of the entire series. And a faithful but modernized remake could elevate those storylines, allowing players to see the seeds of what would later blossom into the franchise's signature style. Combat, however, is where the remake faces its biggest challenge. The original system, built around timed clicking sequences, felt experimental in 2007. Some actually appreciated its deliberate rhythm, but most modern players would find it jarring. It's almost certain that CD Projekt Red will redesign combat to feel closer to the fluid, responsive style introduced in Witcher 3. Dungeon, sign casting, swordplay weight, and enemy behavior will likely be rebuilt from scratch. That change alone could transform the pacing of the entire game. And the key will be preserving the tactical preparation that defines a Witcher profession. Potions, oils, bombs, and knowledge of enemy weaknesses must remain central, because that preparation is what separates Geralt from a generic fantasy swordsman. Another important factor is simply tone. You see, the first Witcher carries a darker, more oppressive mood than its successes, it leans heavily into moral ambiguity and refuses to present clear heroes or villains. Many quests force players into decisions where both feel wrong and the consequences sometimes reveal themselves hours later. That delayed impact is part of what made the original so memorable. In a remake, expanding dialogue, refining character performances, and enhancing cinematic presentation could make those choices even more devastating. Modern storytelling tools, per se, allow for a lot more pauses, lingering glances, and subtle reactions that communicate internal conflict without over-exposition. Strategically, this remake makes sense for CD Projekt Red. After the turbulent launch and long redemption arc of Cyberpunk 2077, returning to The Witcher signals stability and confidence. It reinforces the studio's identity while laying groundwork for the next chapter of the franchise. If a new Witcher saga is indeed on the horizon, reintroducing players to Geralt's origin strengthens the connective tissue of the series. It ensures that newcomers can experience the full arc, not just the polished finale. There is, however, a very delicate balance to maintain. If the remake smooths out every rough edge, it risks losing what made the original distinct. Part of The Witcher's identity came from its European sensibilities, its slower pacing, and its refusal to glamorize its world. It felt grounded, almost cynical in a way many Western RPGs at the time did not. Modernizing the mechanics should not mean sterilizing the atmosphere. The world should still feel uncomfortable, the choices should still feel heavy. Geralt should still feel like a professional navigating a system that is fundamentally broken rather than a chosen hero destined to save it. For longtime fans, this remake represents validation. It acknowledges that the first game deserves to stand out alongside its successes rather than exist as an inaccessible relic. For new players, it offers an entry point that doesn't require tolerating outdated systems. Most importantly, it provides CD Projekt Red the opportunity to refine the beginning of Geralt's journey with everything they have learned over the past decades about world design, combat, narrative delivery. Of course, if executed correctly, The Witcher 1 remake will not simply be a graphical upgrade. It'll be a reintroduction to a darker, more intimate chapter of Geralt's life, presented with the clarity and confidence the studio now possesses. It has the potential to transform a historically important but mechanically dated RPG into a fully modern experience that feels essential rather than optional. Going back to the beginning is rarely easy, especially when expectations are shaped by a masterpiece like Witcher 3. And if that happens, the Legend of the White Wolf won't just continue, it'll feel complete from the very first step.